There are 5 mistakes you might be making with your matcha. If you make any of these 5 mistakes, your matcha will not taste as good and it won't produce as good of a foam. Let's go through each of them step by step so you can make the perfect matcha bowl or matcha latte at home. So the first matcha mistake you might be making is choosing the wrong matcha powder. What you want to go for is first harvest ceremonial grade matcha. Latte matcha can be great if you're combining the tea with milk and sugar, but if you're drinking it plain with water, you really want to go for the good stuff. For first-time matcha drinkers, we recommend to go for an okomidori matcha, like the matcha washamine. While most matcha teas are made with the yabukita cultivar, this tea can be a little bit bitter for first-time tea drinkers. That's why we recommend you go for the much smoother okomidori cultivar. The okomidori cultivar tends to be more difficult to produce, so it's really only reserved for premium matcha and gyokuro. While most okomidori matchas are quite expensive, we found a small farmer outside of Kyoto that produces some really great teas for an affordable price. These teas from the Nakai family are much smoother and less bitter than most matchas, but they still maintain a reasonable price tag. This is a great one to start with if you're planning on drinking the matcha plain. But what's the difference between the two different types of matchas, ceremonial grade matcha and latte grade matcha? Ceremonial grade matcha is a matcha that's intended to be consumed plain, without any sweetener. This matcha has a natural smoothness to it, which is perfected during the long and careful production process. These teas come from the first harvest, so they're higher in nutrients and smoother in flavor. They're also made from the young sprouts of the tea plant, the stems are removed to improve the flavor even further, and they're carefully ground into a fine powder in a large stone mill. Latte grade matcha is the next step down after ceremonial grade matcha. During the production of this matcha, certain steps of the ceremonial grade matcha production process are skipped. As an example, a later harvest of the tea might be used, so the flavor is slightly more bitter and the nutrient content is slightly lower. This is not a problem if you're making matcha lattes, as you'll be adding milk and sugar to the tea. Even though this is seen as a lower quality matcha, it is still important to get a matcha grown without the use of pesticides. If you're looking for the perfect matcha for lattes, we recommend the latte grade matcha from Mr. Masuda in Shizuoka. Now that you've selected the proper matcha, let's move on to the second mistake you might be making when it comes to matcha tea. So a common mistake is not sifting your matcha powder. This may seem like a small detail, but it can actually make a big difference. Matcha powder is very sensitive to humidity, so as soon as it's opened up, it will begin to form these clumps. While these clumps don't impact the integrity of the matcha, they don't mix well into the water, and it can make the drinking experience less enjoyable. You want the powder to be mixed evenly into the water, so each sip has the same consistency. The easy way to do this is just run the powder through a sifter right before you prepare your bowl of tea. This will give you a nice fine powder at the bottom of the bowl and allow you to mix the tea much more easily. We still have 3 more matcha mistakes to get to, but if you're enjoying this video so far, just know that it's only a small excerpt of our book, Secrets of Japanese Green Tea. If you want to get all 100 pages of the best information we've learned during our travels around Japan, you can get it for free. Just click the link in the description below. The third matcha mistake is using too much water. If you want to make a better bowl of matcha, you can use a higher ratio of matcha powder to water. Just like when you're preparing leaf tea, you want the bowl of matcha to be very concentrated in its flavor. We typically recommend going for 2 grams of powder and 100 milliliters of water, but you can always add more water later if the taste is too strong. This high ratio of powder to water is also important when it comes to creating the foam on top of the matcha, but that's something we'll discuss a little bit later. The important thing for now is that you use 2 grams of powder, 100 milliliters of water, and a temperature of between 160 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's move on to the fourth matcha mistake. So although matcha is less sensitive to water temperature compared to loose leaf teas, it still works best in a range between 160 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit. If you use boiling water, you'll extract more of the catechins from the matcha, and these particles will create a more bitter tea. If your water temperature is too low, it will be difficult to make the matcha foam. Just make sure you keep your water temperature within this range of 160 to 175 degrees and you'll be fine. We still have one more matcha mistake to get to, but if you're enjoying this video so far, we would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to our channel and like this video to see more tea videos in the future. Finally, the fifth matcha mistake you might be making is using the wrong whisk. You may see us making bowls of matcha using this bamboo tea whisk or chasen. This is the tool used during the Japanese tea ceremony, and although it's hundreds of years old, it's still the best tool for making these beautiful, foamy bowls of matcha tea. It's made out of a single piece of bamboo, and the 80 to 100 small bristles are individually carved in painstaking detail. If you look at the handle of the matcha whisk, you see that it clearly resembles a stalk of bamboo. And as you go up the length of the whisk, you will notice the stalk of bamboo is split and divided many times over. The second thing you'll notice when you look at the matcha bamboo whisk is the thread, which is carefully weaved in between the bristles. This alternates to separate the interior bristles and the exterior bristles of the matcha whisk. Although this matcha bamboo whisk seems to be old-fashioned, there is still no better tool when it comes to whisking matcha. When you whisk a bowl of matcha, you really want this light green foam on top. The foam is not just for looks. It also gives the matcha a smoother and creamier taste, almost like a latte, but without any milk or sugar. To create the foam, you need to quickly aerate the tea with these small bubbles, and there's no better tool for it than the bamboo matcha whisk. We've tried the bamboo matcha whisk side by side with a metal whisk, and it clearly does a better job at creating a thick foam on top. Another benefit of the matcha whisk is that it's completely silent. A lot of people like to whisk up their bowl of matcha in the morning, and the sounds of this delicate bamboo whisk moving through the foam can be quite soothing. Contrast this to the sound of a metal whisk scraping up against the sides of the bowls, and you will get a picture of just how different these two tools are. A final benefit of the bamboo whisk is that it allows you to properly practice some of the steps and the principles of the Japanese tea ceremony. A big part of the Japanese tea ceremony is learning how to use and maintain these tea utensils properly. By using the proper matcha tea utensils, you're not only learning the techniques, but it's also creating a stronger bond between you and this centuries-old Japanese green tea. So when it comes to making a matcha latte, the same principles apply. You should make sure that you're using the proper matcha for your latte, and you should make sure to sift it so that you don't end up with clumps in your latte. You'll also want to limit the amount of water you use so the flavor doesn't become diluted, and make sure that you use the proper utensils. If you want to get the best ceremonial or latte grade matcha, we would love it if you browsed our selection at neoteas.com. After traveling around Japan for the past few years, we met with dozens of farmers and sampled hundreds of different types of matcha teas. We've ultimately selected a small list of our favorites, and we're so happy to share them with all of you. Another way to support this channel is by liking this video and subscribing so you can see more tea videos in the future. Until then, we'll see you next time.